We are live now. And welcome, friends. And I'd like to welcome you all to the YouTube channel of VS Strategic Business Consulting. Today, it's a very important day because we would be discussing and hearing from four stalwarts and four proven leaders from the industry and learn from them about what are the business and leadership challenges and opportunities. And is this the right time or a preferred time for India to grow and concentrate towards becoming and getting into the global business leadership position? And I welcome you all, panelists, to introduce the panel. First, Mr. Raja Krishnamurthy is a senior OD consultant, a leadership coach, actor, director, scriptwriter, and is also a social activist. Welcome, sir. Next, we have Mr. Shankar Vaddadi. He is a serial entrepreneur. He is a fintech expert, digital transformation expert, M&A expert, and he's also a member of Fintech Association in India, and also the payments. He's a part of the Payments Association, right, Shankar?
Council.
And I would Payments Council. Welcome you, Shankar.
Thank you.
Next we have Mr. Hariprasad Menon. He's a senior leadership coach, partner, and CEO of Grid International India. Welcome, Hari.
Thank you.
We have Mr. Krishna Kishore, who is the senior vice president, group head, human resource for Greenko. Welcome, KK. We fondly call him as KK. So welcome you all. So I would like to first put across this point to all the panelists, thanking you all for being a part of this panel discussion. What do you think about, and what is your thought process and perspective with respect to this topic that we want to discuss today? Business and leadership challenges and opportunities that we see in this new normal or the new model. And is this a time for India to actually grow and gain its position in the global leadership position across the business diaspora? I would like to start with Shankar, because you coming from a serial entrepreneurship and you've seen length and breadth of this industry from an employer as well as from an entrepreneurial standpoint. I would like to start with you, Shankar.
See, Venkat, thank you so much. See, the opportunity has always been there for India.
Okay.
Considering the fact that, it's large population base, which is also primarily English speaking, has always meant that there has been a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of possibility for India to, I wouldn't say rightful place, but to become a prominent player. But to be honest, we have missed the mass manufacturing bus. So there is no point in looking at mass manufacturing at this stage, because we're going to take eons to catch up with China, no matter what they're currently going through. If their stock in the world is at its lowest, still doesn't matter. The investments and the traction that China has achieved in the mass manufacturing space are not going to be matched anytime soon by India, and that would require significant structural reforms, which are not going to be possible in a democracy. Having said that, what we need to do is to look at manufacturing from a technical perspective, right? To give you an example, textiles. Obviously, China is the largest exporter of textiles in the world. Right? And they export everything to everything, except some very niche areas which are dominated by Turkey and others. Almost all the low-cost, mass-produced textiles are manufactured and exported or sold to the world by China. So where do we come in? I mean, considering that, textiles is the second largest sector that employs people in India after agriculture, right? So how do we actually, gain leadership role globally in, let's say, the textile sector? I would say going to technical textiles, which requires skilled workforce, not just unskilled manpower. It requires a certain amount of R&D, which requires a certain amount of manufacturing expertise. So India needs to be smart now and not really hanker after after mass manufacturing of commodity-based products, but actually, get into areas where the advantages a country like India inherently possesses can be leveraged.
Beautiful, beautiful. In fact, you have trickled a point before, we'll get into the details of it, because I have statistics which I would like to take it to the next point in probably some time. Next, I would request Mr. Raja sir to actually give his perspective. If I hear, about your perspective on this particular topic, and how do you see it as an OD and a change management expert?
Venkat, on this point related to opportunity across the globe from a business point of view, I would say that I would trust Shankar with his wisdom and with his exposure to bring in the points like what he has talked about very specifically, be it in the manufacturing sector or be it, let's say, in a very key area like the textile sector. What I would look at is the potential for Indian managers and for Indian leaders during this new normal, during this period where with the pandemic across the globe, challenges have been faced by organizations. Challenges to leadership have been, kind of posed. Challenges to management issues have really sprung up. Okay.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
What is it about the Indian managers and about the Indian leaders that can be different? And I think the 3 points that Shankar talked about. One is, of course, India has this richness of population. Second, I would say richness of native intelligence, because in terms of both civilization, in terms of cultural moorings and all that. And third one, as I said, in terms of sheer language ability, a country where English has become its almost a mother tongue in spite of being such a differentiated language. So this raw material of Indian managership and raw material of Indian leadership is extremely powerful. Now, I think this challenge of the pandemic over this, kind of long period of 9 months or even let's say further, there is one more very interesting strength which I believe India has. And that is what I call as the cultural philosophical strength that it has. The difference is for most of the managers, especially with the Western orientation, linear logic is what works. Okay, and linear logic is how life is led. Fortunately, the cultural and, if I can say, the philosophical mooring clearly tells you that it's not linear, but it is circular. Life goes into a circle. So therefore, culturally and philosophically, this is a country, this is a place where the ability to accept, the kind of flowing changes, the ability to accept the duality of ups and downs, the ability not just to dismiss, from a fateful kind of point of view, saying that it can happen, but to say that the overall control of environmental, kind of issues, the overall control of having everything within what you may call as manageable limits may be a myth. What you are allowed to or what you can do is to really engage very deeply and pursue excellence. If you really want to define the karma theory as applicable to a good business organization, it is pursuit of excellence with deep engagement, all right? And if you're focused on that, you will produce the kind of results, okay? So I think the philosophical cultural part of it actually gives a greater strength to understand that, all right? So in the cyclical reality of life and not the linear, where you have a linear perspective, you think it's disaster. What do we do now? Because only success, only the right things, only good things happening become the acceptable factors. But here is a philosophy which accepts the duality. So I think from that, if I can use that term, from that mindset point of view and the ability to pick this up, learn through this and bounce back point of view, I think Indian managers and Indian leaders are far well prepared in terms of their mindset, and I would say in terms of their DNA. And I think therefore we have got a great opportunity. So what is seen as a disaster, the opportunity to say, okay, what's behind this disaster, that could be a great rallying point. That could be a great opportunity that one can discover. This possibility, I believe, is available to the Indian managers much better than many other kind of countries, especially the Western countries. But how they bring that in, how they actually put it into a organizational business structure and systems, and then go gung-ho for that. I think that's something that we need to really see. But I think the potential for that, that foundation for that, that cultural philosophical mindset is much better here than many other places.
Beautiful point. In fact, this is something where I'm really liking at the combination of it, coming from a typical business as well as an OD background. Now, let me take this further and ask KK, because he is a person who actually enables a business and a huge business. And certainly, it would be good to hear from him in terms of the kind of challenges probably he is facing, or the HR leaders are facing in the industry today, because we get to hear from them. We have a lot of supply, but we don't have the real talent. This is one word which we get to hear specifically from the Indian talent market. So, KK, I would like to ask you, what is your perspective on this? Do you see this as an opportunity? Because hearing from Shankar and also hearing from the, OD aspect from Raja sir, do you see the current talent is really having the kind of a potential where it can grow to the next level and claim the leadership position and enable the business in the leadership position? Then we will get into the coaching aspect from Hari.
Thank you, Venkat. I certainly I agree with Hari and Kitty sir. In fact, look at an opportunity in every adversity. That's something we all know, a famous quote. I feel this particular adverse situation has certainly pushed the Indian market or Indian people as such at a very large level to really introspect. We never bothered to do that, perhaps. We never probably invested time, nor there was a need. But the situation pushed everyone to introspect. What comes out of the introspection, what is the takeaway, is a different thing. But certainly, people started thinking in various angles. At the opportunity level, certainly I feel the small and medium sector has a great opportunity compared to the manufacturing sector or bigger size. Something which Hari was mentioning. Yes, we are not talking about global competition and matching volumes of China and so forth, but SME sectors have pulled back well, though the first 3 months is a kind of a suspense to everyone. People have pulled back. And certainly, as Raja sir was mentioning, the kind of a philosophy we had always helped us to bounce back. And in fact, that's been great. A virtue which probably we are bent philosophically to take things and challenges, unlike the West, they get shaken away. We all talk about the VUCA concept, but isn't it the VUCA concept is part of our Indian lives, given our kind of living and standards and limitations, uncertainties, so on and so forth. So getting back to the talent, we have an interest perspective wherein that with this pandemic, over 69% of the people globally, including India, felt they will lose their jobs. But certainly it did not happen as much, probably as much people feared. There were certain things happened, but things are fairly okay. But having said that, when it comes to talent, the nurturing of the talent and grooming of the talent, which is something very common at a shop floor level, has suffered because of the virtual working model. And industries like IT, I don't think took much of hit of that. They're fairly okay. But other manufacturing sectors have taken a big beat on that. The HR teams across the businesses were working hard with their leadership teams on the business continuity plans. In fact, each of these organizations had their own business continuity plans to make sure that the loss is minimal or the production did not suffer. Especially, I could know the pharma industry has done a great job. In fact, not naming the companies, I've seen in some of the pharma companies, the manufacturing teams have been supported by none other than the COO and CEO in the shop floor. Trust me on that. They sat with their teams to ensure and give confidence that, no need to worry in this pandemic situation, did you follow the safety precautions. That kind of a morale boosting doses they gave to their employees to make sure that their production goes up and ensures a supply. Let me give you a different perspective from my own sector. I am in the power sector, renewable power sector. We are in a kind of an essential services where we can't afford a breakdown. Most of our power plants are located across the country, need some kind of talent to run the show. And we had such a beautiful business continuity plan in a flexible way, wherein that more than 50% of our talent are youngsters who could support the plant without a break. Wherein there were some people who could not come because of a red zone or an yellow zone or whatever fears. We ensured that there is no disruption to the power supply. At the same time, we ensured their safety, and we had a good balance. In fact, we could achieve it luckily with good amount of planning, well in advance. In fact, we know that we can't afford to stop the plans. Our planning started way back in March itself, and we quickly could put things forward. So the HR teams across the country in different businesses definitely were working very hard in various innovative business continuity plans. And certainly it was a challenge, but I see a greater opportunity in this kind of adversity. And I see no reason why we can't be competing with the global leaders, nor we can produce leaders for the global market. So that's my take.
Brilliant, brilliant. I'll come back to you because there is some, again, and as I said to Shankar, there are some pointers on the statistics which I'll come in the coming time. Let me now go, come to Hari. Hari, what are your thoughts and what are your perspective? You're hearing from three different sides now, from coaching and an advisory aspect. How do you see this, coming up?
Okay, firstly, KK, I think you're referring to, Shankar as Hari. So I am Hari, and, a couple of times you said Hari, and, I guess Shankar will be missed. So so that's one.
I was referring to Shankar. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm sure you are referring to Shankar. So, twice you mentioned Shankar as Hari. So I thought, before you continue that, we'll give you that. Yeah. So, I heard interesting perspectives. I really loved, Mr. Raja's perspective of this, the philosophy and the mindset. I think, that sort of defines the Indian leaders' mindset, irrespective of what kind of company they are working for and stuff like that. I'll come back to it a little later. One of the points, that struck me in your topic, one is you mentioned about leadership challenges, okay, and opportunities. And then you said, how is India positioned to take over the global leadership? Yeah. Now I'm looking at the leadership challenges. So I'm going to give you a response from those two perspectives. What are the leadership challenges and opportunities? Okay. One of the things that you see, that has happened with this pandemic is, it's become a great leveler. I don't think apart from World War II, we have seen anything at a that has disrupted the world at such a global scale. Okay, literally every country has been disrupted in their own way. Okay, whether they are technically competent, financially superb, like the US or something like that, or the Southeast Asians, or Central Asian Republic. So you see everybody, including India. It's been one of the I guess since World War II, I don't think there has been a global leveler. So it's leveled out everything. Okay, so two things have come out because of that. One is the need opportunities. Different organizations in different countries are facing different needs. Okay, some are facing infrastructure development needs, and some are facing talent needs. Some are facing a need for funding. For example, places like Sri Lanka and Pakistan, they need tremendous infrastructure, but they are also not financially geared. So there is a tremendous amount of quid pro quo that needs to happen, in all these countries. And all kinds of organizations are necessary. I mean, if you look at UAE is sort of, it's very sad, but they are one of the largest hit because, they depend so much on a lot of other countries for their economy. So you see, the kind of organizations that are operating in UAE, the kind of needs that UAE has, etc., is all kinds of organizations, technical infrastructure, etc., etc. So there is, the leadership needs across the globe are going to be one of, how can leaders inspire the change? Okay, so a huge leadership need is, any leader that can inspire is going to be tremendously in demand, and any leader who cannot inspire is not going to, be much in demand. Okay, the second thing that needs to happen is, what the pandemic has done is it has chipped away at the resource availability. Okay, a lot of organizations needed to lay off people. Okay, it's not because they don't want them, it's because they couldn't afford them. Okay, they were not getting money and they had to lay off people. So two things: one, they have lost money. Okay, they don't have money, they have less money. Two, they are having access to less manpower. Okay, the third, access to resources. I just heard Kishore talking about how the pandemic has affected the shop floor. Okay, and how people had to come from the red zone, and so it has affected access to resources. Now if you look at it, what is happening is, globally all over the place, you're having a situation where the resources are trimmed drastically, whether it is money or men or material or funds or whatever. Okay, it's trimmed drastically. Knowledge is available. Okay, so what happens is, organizations, any organization in the world that is capable of doing more and more and more, but with less and less and less. Okay, that's the kind of organization that's going to survive. Okay, which means the leader who's going to be relevant, okay, is going to be a leader who can drive this. Okay, who can continue to do more and more and more with less and less and less. Because if you look at the output needs, okay, post COVID, everyone wants the world to virtually go back to pre-COVID levels, or that's the thirst. Okay, and everyone wants to be everyone is waiting for the market to fly off. Okay, and it's very interesting to hear Mr. Raja talk about the linearity of of leadership. Now this is typically what has happened in the earlier times. Okay, you give me X people, X money, I will deliver Y output. Okay, now today the output demand is like 2Y and 3Y and 4Y. Okay, but what has happened is X has been knocked off by half, or 60%. Okay, but the demand output need is very high. Okay, people want more money, people want to retain their jobs, people want money to buy. And so what is happening is, if the linearity is the only thing that's going to work, then this is not going to work. Okay, which is, you're going to have less and less and less resources, but you're going to have higher and higher and higher output needs. Okay, so linearity is not going to work here. The only way it will work, okay, if you're able to create an exponential output, which means less number of people, less money, less time, less access to raw materials, needs to start producing higher and higher and higher. Okay, so the leadership needs are going to be people, one, who can inspire change. Okay, tremendous amount of digitization has spurred. Okay, all every organization is trying to optimize the digital changes. So one, people who can inspire change and institutionalize it. Okay, second, leaders who can deliver more and more and more with less and less and less. Okay, third is going to be a kind of leader who can actually create a vision, because what the pandemic has done, like I told you, is leveling the game. Okay, so everybody is virtually in the same game. So pretty much US or India, we are pretty much in the same game, because 10 years from now the global market would have changed with all these triggers, digitization and different kinds of needs, different kinds of industry segments is coming up. Okay, digitization, AI, machine learning, all kinds of things are coming up. Okay, so the world is going to be the same for somebody like India. Or so there, I believe, somebody who can create a vision, okay, and inspire change. So these are the three kinds of leaders. So if you ask me, what are the leadership opportunities and challenges? A, somebody who can inspire change. B, somebody who can deliver more and more with less and less. And C, somebody who can provide a vision. That's going to be the leadership opportunity. Okay, and the opportunity is that there is going to be such a huge number of leadership needs. Okay, that I don't think there are enough leadership supply chains today that can actually, because if you look at LinkedIn today, every day I see hundreds of recruitment needs. Okay, so so however the needs are changing. Okay, it's not your old developer that wants, people are looking for AI related developers or managers or project managers, etc., etc. Okay, so that's the leadership. How is India positioned to take over the global stage? And that's where I'll sort of come back to Mr. Raja's thing. This mindset. Now, if you look at Indian innovation that has happened over the last 100 years or so, you would see that there has not been any path-breaking innovation that has happened. Okay, but what has happened is a lot of workarounds. Okay, India is probably one of the few countries that has faced constant upheaval. Okay, if you just before independence or just around independence, resources were stripped to the to the knees. No resources. Okay, and people had to find a way. The Indian Railways was born after that. Today is one of the largest network in the world. Okay, and if you look at the technology boom that has happened post 70s, post the liberalization, that's the reforms that started coming out, Indian tech is pretty much driving the whole world. Okay, so a lot of changes have happened in the Indian diaspora over the last even if you take the last 60 years or 70 years since independence, but you wouldn't find a single big ticket innovation that has happened, or any invention that has happened. So the Indian mindset is, how can you work around? Okay, and that's, you can actually see it now, because if you look, when you read the newspapers today, you're actually seeing news of economic recovery, which is one of the fastest. Okay, and while a lot of people may be skeptical about it, saying, oh, is this a bubble? Is it pent up demand? Whatever it is, the whole world has faced a downhill over the last 6 or 7 months, and the fastest one to get out of that and to get moving is India. Okay, so I've heard that the automotive industry is very close to pre-COVID levels. A lot of consumer electronics like phones, they're all past very close to pre-COVID. So you see, there is a tremendous amount of yank back that has happened. Okay, all it needed was for the lockdown to end, and people are going about their lives and creating stuff. Okay, and that, I think, is the opportunity for India, that we are fastest on the on our feet. The turnaround is fast. We have found workarounds. Okay, we didn't wait for a vaccine. We just put on the masks and started working, started delivering, and with good results. I mean, our COVID cases are coming down, our recovery cases are going up. So it's not as if we are paying a very heavy price for that. Okay, we are paying a very, very low price for this. So I personally believe that in both in India is pretty much not just opportunities, but I think it's pretty much in the driver's seat to take over the change leadership.
Fantastic. In fact, this point is very interesting to note. Now, I have a point based on what I've heard from all four of you. Specifically, we typically look at the trend, as well as specifically if we look at from the last 60 years or so. India has always been the business diaspora. Specifically, I'm talking to the business diaspora. It's always been at the service-oriented end. That's probably one of the reasons why our manufacturing took a hit. Shankar, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but we have always been on the service-oriented mindset. That's why if you typically look at, I think globally, India is the only country where IT developed a lot, but infrastructure we are developing now, right? In a similar case, KK can let us know, airlines was privatized, airports were not privatized, and we are privatizing later. So similarly, the logistics aspects of it, the supply chain aspect of it, even though we had the ability or the tentacles to move across and have the connections, we lack specific aspects of enabling or the supporting elements to it, which today I think we have found an answer, or we have found a roundabout to hit that. That's why Amazons of the world or Apples of the world, they're coming here and they want to do it. Alibaba, there was a recent news that they want to set up a huge network of supply chain wing here in India, having a base for their global exports, right? So now looking at the point of innovations in the last 60 years, there has not been many, but there I might probably tend to disagree to some extent. The reason is most of the top inventions, if you typically look at in the current era, the driver's seat have been from the Indian aspect, be it if we talk about, Amazon's, why or this one, the Kindle, or probably even this one, the project management, that person was from India. And the Google Map, it happened, I know that initially it started off, the Google Map, the pilot, it happened from Hyderabad, from Hyderabad city. So I think we have the potential. And typically, if you typically look into the educational qualification percentage, just I'm coming out with the base statistics, less than 4% of the people are actually, professionally qualified or graduates in India. So that means we have a potential for 96% and more people who are still to be qualified. With this less than 4% of the qualification, if we are in a position to drive across the global business diaspora in the top companies, is it not an opportunity for us to be able to grow further, inspire the millennials or the new age members to grow and get into the leadership position? Now, let me actually share one page of point with you guys, which is going to actually give a bare statistics, and then I'll come back to Shankar and ask his points about it, and then go to the other parts. Just give me one. Okay. Now, what it says here is average age. If you typically look at in India, as per UN report, it states that India is the youngest country today with maximum number of people who are young and youth in population. It says country with a maximum percentage of youth population, 65% of the population are 45 years and below, with a median age of 28.4 years. And 28% of this population are within the age of 10 to 24 years. Now, I think it is a tremendous opportunity for India in terms of scaling, not just from the business or the overall aspect, but from the foundational mindset and leadership aspects. I think education is something which needs to be looked into as one of the prime factors if we have to grow in any facets or any walks of life. And if you typically look at globally, if we look at the Indian population and this one, maximum number of qualified professionals across services, right? We have, be it in services, manufacturing, and new age skills like fintech or digital or gaming or graphic designing, these aspects, we have the base coming from India. And India today, our foreign relations, if you typically look at, we have strong and excellent relations with 29 plus countries, of which there are world superpowers there. So I think it is a tremendous opportunity for us if we are in a position to capitalize our relationship, collaborating with our service-oriented mindset. We have been ranked top 10 among services covering technology, new age, digital stream, e-commerce, medicine, finance, engineering, supply chain, etc. So is it not a huge opportunity for us in terms of whatever challenges that we might have faced in the past 60 years? But I think the next 10 years are going to be extremely crucial for any business or any walks of life for Indian to grow into the global leadership position. Let us hear from Shankar. Shankar, what is your thought on this?
So statistics are great, Venkat. And I do agree that, we are the youngest country, etc., all that. But I'd like to share a small anecdote. When I first set up my manufacturing industry, it was an electronics manufacturing unit. I think in 1997, I started the project. I got all the approvals and commenced the construction in 99. And once we were about to go live, when production was supposed to go, we had a visit from somebody called a boiler inspector.
Okay.
Now we had to get a boiler inspector NOC.
Yeah. No objection certificate.
No clue what a boiler inspector was doing in 1999 in an electronics manufacturing zone.
Okay. That is something very interesting to know that. Okay.
So now, this is just an anecdote. And then me as an entrepreneur had to run around, find out where the boiler inspector's office was in the first place, to apply for whatever permission and all. And for the devil of it, he had nothing to do with any boiling. So it was electronics manufacturing unit. We were actually assembling something. We're not even actually manufacturing. We had assembly lines to put together SKD kits. So it starts from that. This is at a micro level. But at a macro level, what tends to happen is we are a consumption-driven economy. Right? We are not an export-driven economy. And the reason a lot of companies are coming to India or looking at India, because they look at India as a market and not as a resource. There's a key difference. If Amazon is here, because we have these second largest number of middle class people in India who have a buying power, which is second only to either US or China.
Okay. So now this is an interesting point.
Yeah. So if you look at any of the manufacturing that has been established in India, it is not really export-driven manufacturing. It's a consumption-driven manufacturing. It's for consumer domestic demand. So that is how it's going to be. We are not going to reinvent or pivot manufacturing into an export-driven activity anytime soon. That's really not going to happen. Two, one, because our labor laws are absolutely archaic. Right. Now, second, you spoke about talent. Right. There's one thing to have graduation, but I think all of you will affirm to the fact that what about the employability? When I wanted graduate engineer trainees, I couldn't find two people over after looking at 200 people. Because your education system, vocational, whatever this thing, does not have any industry connect. I mean, these are things that, we've, said number of times and, so we have the national skilling program, blah, 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 all that. But the challenges in any economy, if you have agriculture, which is essentially an unskilled this thing, you also need to build intermediate skills before you go to the advanced skills like post-graduation or management or medicine or finance or whatever. You need to build intermediate skills. Somewhere down the line, we've not really built intermediate skills. Okay. So what tends to happen is that this from this low strata, or let's say the bottom strata of the population, their skilling remains a significant challenge. And in the absence of skilling, livelihoods are always a problem. While we have a huge population, while they're young, etc., all that, we still have a long way to go to make them, one, employable, two, productive.
Shankar, I would like to make one point here. Sorry to have interrupted you, but this aspect, I completely agree with respect to the core skills and the employable skills. But isn't it an opportunity for the organizations to probably build relationships and collaborate with the universities or probably at the college level and groom students at that point in time, not look at only as an investment?
In the last 2 decades, there have been initiatives, for instance, but these initiatives are at the higher level. For instance, the Indian Institute of Science collaborates with multiple private organizations. Some of the IITs collaborate with multiple private organizations. But that's not enough. It's not enough at that level. You need collaboration at the lowest strata.
Let me interrupt. Sorry again. Raja sir, I would like to get you here in this point after listening to Shankar. You also were into politics briefly for a brief time, right? So I would like to ask you, because there is certainly, it's a fact with respect to the education system or the model, as well as, the, I would say the bureaucratic approach in terms of licensing or developing or giving opportunities to startups or to manufacturing and the growing economy. There has been some gaps which has been discussed at a NASSCOM level, CII level, and we keep talking about it. Now, what is your insight and what is that you think is a stand the government might have to consider which probably if we can listen from people like you, I think, it is a point which probably, can make a huge impact.
It's a very tempting and such a wide kind of area to kind of get into. But first, let me truly appreciate the point that Shankar has brought in. And I don't know whether you had some ability to mind read. The thoughts were going through my mind, and you asked a question related to the political system. And before we started the whole discussion, I was talking to Shankarji and saying, I want to have a connect with you and talk about socio-political issues and influencing, even before we started all this. So I'll come to that. The point is, bright minds in large numbers in a great population equal to therefore making great strides and tapping of opportunity could be a misnomer, because there is a connecting point in between. And the connecting point in between is called disciplined efforts. You may have great minds with a large population, and you may have immense opportunity and great strides to make. But if you do not have the middle point called disciplined efforts, all right, then whatever you have could be a hope, but may not be a reality. Now, therefore, when you talk about India as a country of culture, India as a country of philosophy, India as a country of industry, India as a country of business, and India as a country of political system, I think that needs to come in. So you heard the story about the boiler inspector, all right? People who have been in HR, all of us know the archaic kind of labor laws and rules, and what happens to us even for a supervisor to be able to give written instruction on a shop floor saying, you jolly well do it, and then you know what happens. Everything comes to a halt kind of thing. And that freedom, that licentiousness, all that is part of your socio-political, kind of system. So when we really look at that, he talked about intermediary skills, which is fantastic, because that is the connect between the bright minds and great opportunities at a ground level. Okay, so what do we really require to do? My feeling is that service orientedness is the natural mindset, kind of the Indian. So fine, it'll work. But when you want to get into things like hardcore technology, manufacturing, and creating. So we are talking about servicing versus manufacturing, creating part of it. You are left with no choice but to have strong factors of controllability, enforceability, and execution ability. Okay, that's very much required. So what has happened in China, for example, is there has been a nice blend of the communist disciplining and controlling system with the appreciation of the power of capitalist, kind of a mindset.
I used to have a factory in China, so I know how the thing works.
Exactly, right?
So it's a
I think the biggest entrance and the biggest of China. Okay, so two opposite philosophies have joined together to make the social system work in the business domain with tremendous amount of impact. We don't have it here. Okay, so what is required is your question is valid. I think now this is a time and this is an opportunity and this is the possibility. Luckily, during this pandemic times, what you're also seeing in India is a tremendous impact of the socio-political system to make sense, to be able to drive, to be able to hold divergent points of view together, still bring in some order in an otherwise very disorderly democracy of this country. And I think this is an opportunity for us to really hold that, maneuver that a little bit, mold that a little bit, and convert that into inputs and guidance and support for the business opportunities. I'm not describing that in detail. I have some thoughts about it. But if we can do that, then I'm saying more than what I may call as exploitative controlling of a communism, you may have a passion-driven, you may have an agenda-driven, you may have a culture-driven discipline of a different kind. And if we can bring that sooner than later, then the dream of great minds meeting great opportunities can happen with great discipline. But we need that.
Excellent.
Yeah,
I think this is a time where we really need to look into it.
So to answer your question in full, so that is just one perspective. Having said that, if you look at the IT services sector, now again we pride ourselves on the IT services sector, right? But let's be very honest. Where are we in the food chain? Okay, so what is the kind of skills that we are exporting to the world? And how many product companies have come out of India? IT, software. Okay, so whether it is Infosys or TCS, they're very low in the food chain. They're probably third in the food chain. If let's say Boeing requires a set of 3 technical skills, it's the IBMs and the Accentures that are going there, not the TCSs and the Infosys, not yet there. So we have seen a space or an opportunity and occupied it, but we're not working hard enough to move up the food chain. And we've built large behemoths, but largely we have commoditized industry.
Yep. Makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Before we go to the next point, viewers, if you have any specific questions, you can actually post it in the comment, and I would ask the question, and I would get the answers from the panelists.
So the mindset change across the board. Yeah. That's just the conclusion.
Okay. Now, let me come back to Raja sir again, take this point, and then I'll go to Kishore, how he would actually enable with this viewpoint. Now, coming back to this one, how important is a change in the education system in the current scenario, which has an impact not just in one field, but across the walks of life? Now, just now we heard about Shankar talking about taking up an opportunity like Infosys or TCS and these services, ID services, but not much of product development or product company which have actually come from the Indian market. So one of the aspect could be aligning to what Kishore was talking about in his previous point, as well as Shankar, about the availability of the required talent and the required skill set. Is it more there, or is it a combination of mindset as well as the socio-political aspect and governance aspect of it?
Since you mentioned about education, therefore influencing the education system and therefore, being able to reap the results is a 2 decades plan. So let's get that clear. So you can have that kind of a very long-term vision of at least a decade, maybe into 2 decades, and then you can do things. The good thing is the new education policy definitely has many plus points which can take us there, okay? But that's not going to deliver for us, let's say, within the next 5 years and those kind of things. What will deliver for us is a very, very woken up, very, very alert, very, very inspiring. And I like what, Hari talked about, the inspiring leadership that we're talking about, but inspiring leadership across the board. I think that's the important point. I think it's time that we start looking at these interdependencies and bring in leadership interdependencies to influence each other from the education sector, from the industry sector, from the business sector, into the social sector, into the socio-political sector, with this one important agenda. Today, Venkat, your passion about looking at this country, India, and then talking about opportunities must be a common song and theme that must be echoed across these multiple sectors. When that happens, all right, then we create a different kind of a leadership potential. I like KK's, Hari's other point. So he talked about the ability to do more with the less part of it. All right. So I was very pleasantly surprised. He mentioned about it, which I think is one tremendously, important point. I would say the 3 important, abilities that this pandemic times, the new normal has really given us to look at are what I would call as abilities which are or capabilities related to change. And I put it this way, 2 of them we already know. Adaptability, we know. Agility, we know. The 3rd one, I call it possibility, but it's not P-O-S-S-I, P-A-U-S-E, possibility. And why do I say possibility rather than a reckless running, okay, with a unidimensional kind of a point of view? Learn from the world. And I love what Shankar was talking about. Can we learn from the world? Realistically look at China, realistically look at the other countries. What have they done? How come some of the countries, for example, even in Southeast Asia, during this period, became preferred manufacturers more than India? Those are the lessons that we need to really pick up and learn fast. So learn from the world, learn from the environment. Second one, link with your context. Link that with your context, and wherever cleaning up needs, and I'm again repeating, you have a tremendous need to clean up in the socio-political system. Do what is required to work over there. Okay, junk the kind of laws, and I'm not saying become ruthless. I'm saying junk the kind of laws which are not enabling, facilitate with the kind of points of views socio-politically, which will be enabling. And third, as a result of that, leverage with maturity. I would call as the 3L agenda. Learn from the world, link to your context, leverage with maturity. And I'm using the word maturity cautiously. I'll talk about it later. If you have this, and across the spectrum of from educational, from industry, from business, from socio and socio-political leadership alignment. So our leadership alignment has got to be of a much higher level. It just cannot be the minuscule or a limited industry business kind of leadership. And therefore, new influencing perspectives are required. I think if you have that, then we possibly have an agenda to do something in 5 years.
I'll probably pull in Hari here, because he coming from as a leadership coach, and then I'll go to KK, because now there is a requirement for leadership at all levels. Now, Hari, quick 2 minutes. I want you to actually let me know how this aspect is possible, considering the current political scenario and what needs to be done if we have to consider holistically build this particular aspect at the global level.
Okay, let's for any kind of leadership, one of the key elements is rather than figure out what we need and and trying to look at what is not there. Let's focus on what is there and how can we leverage it. Okay, so I go back, how can we do more and more with less and less? Okay, I'd like to take Shankar's point about the employability, which is so true. That if you are trying to hire 2 people, it's so sad that you have to go through 200 resumes or interviews or whatever. Now the problem or the root cause of that is this. Okay, most of the time our corporates, we have been focused on hiring skills. Okay, we've been focused on hiring technical knowledge. So in the last X number of decades, right up to probably 1 year ago, we have been constantly hiring skills. Okay, so if that is the demand, then obviously the education system has responded to that demand by churning out n number of hundreds and thousands and hundreds of thousands of technical graduates. The problem is the actual interviewing that happens, when and I'm sure KK can vouch for this, and I'm sure Shankar, who was hired, can vouch for this. When you actually sit and make an interview, okay, what you're actually hiring, okay, this is the level that's not visible. This is what I call the iceberg level, which is below the water level. What is actually driving the hiring, okay, is not your skill. What's actually driving the hiring is your behavior or your attitude. Okay, when you look at any hirer, okay, any manager sitting and trying to hire, you would rather hire an average competency but with a superb attitude for collaboration, cooperation, a team player, rather than a super technical guy but who's got his air. I would ask anybody, who would you, I mean, you look at it, whenever we buy stuff, when you want to buy a TV or when you want to buy a car, where do you buy it from? Do you buy it from the swankiest showroom, or do you buy it from the place who's willing to treat you with respect and integrity and warmth? Yeah. So whenever we are hiring, we are actually hiring the behavior and the attitude, and we are hiring the softer elements. The skills open the door. If you have a certain marks and if you have a certain technical capability, it helps you open the door. It makes you relevant, and it says, okay, you can be considered for the interview. but there are 200 others with similar. Why are we looking at the two guys, out of 200? It's because it's those two guys who actually bring in both the elements, the aptitude and the attitude, the skill and the willingness, so the ability and the behavior. These are the two things. Now you look at the ability and the willingness. High ability, low willingness, nobody wants to work with that guy. Okay. Similarly, low ability, low willingness, also nobody wants to work with that guy. Okay. Now,
Hari, one moment. Sorry for the interrupting, but the point is, the benefit of time, I think Shankar just pinged me. There's something has come up. He might want to leave just before he leaves, because this point is pretty crucial. KK, how would you see, and how do you actually, expect from your team to bridge this gap and identify the critical leaders at all levels, so that the overall business strategy or the organizational goals are achieved and enabled? And then I'll go back to Shankar, and I would request you to please give your point in less than 2 minutes, because Shankar wants to leave, and I want to just check one point from him before he leaves.
First thing is the point Mr. Hari was making, that doing things with less numbers and coming out with good productivity. In fact, that is the order of the day, and that has been a reality. That's what happened to all the players in the system. Like it could be any industry. In fact, if you take our power sector, we ran the plants literally with skeletal staff, and we ensured the production is not affected. And what matters is, at the end of the day, even when it comes to the selection, I think Shankar made it clear, and Mr. Hari has emphasized, and Rajas had killed it with a beautiful word called disciplined efforts. We want to bring the talent who have the right mindset and attitude. Talent always can be built, competencies always can be built, because it is the inherent ability which you need to nurture to build the competency. They can always do that if the right attitude is there. And leaders are the people whom we need to work around, as rightly pointed out by Mr. Hari sir, and also Mr. Shankar, where that we need to make sure that they work on this talent and they are groomed appropriately for the respective positions. I would like to
KK, just one moment. KK, one moment. I think it's time for Shankar. Shankar, sorry, but I would just like to hear from you about your experience on this panel before you're leaving. And I apologize for the delay, and thank you for that. Thanks for
wonderful panel. Happy to have interacted with all of you. I hope to connect with each of you on LinkedIn subsequently, and hopefully we will have opportunity to interact more in the future. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I apologize once again because something suddenly came up. I wouldn't mind it a little overflow, but I just needed to rush.
No problem. No problem.
Shankar, it was joy listening to you, and we'll keep connected. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Pleasure. Thank you.
Pleasure meeting you, Shankar.
Thank you, Shankar. Yes, KK, we will continue with your point. Go ahead.
The perspective, two aspects. One is, we are talking about leadership, addressing the issue in terms of building the right talent with the right skills. But the question is, how disciplined are we as a team to make sure that we have the right people even to groom? The two challenges. One is the generation gap with the leaders who are maybe mostly from maybe the generation Y to a millennial. This is a huge challenge in every industry. In fact, millennials, probably we need to spend some time on that. They're bright, young, potential, energetic souls, but to understand them is a complex challenge for any leader, because the leader would not have gone through such a journey in his life. And the aspirational mode of these millennials is so huge. Their adaptability levels are very pathetic. They're good, but they are very idealistic. And in fact, the word I would like to take from it is a disciplined efforts. They don't make, because they want the things to be in their own style, moving on with flexibility. And their adaptability is a great concern. That's one of the huge challenges we see in every industry. Let me give an interesting example. We have people from the campuses is when we are talking about the conversion ratio, which Mr. Hari sir was mentioning. It is going to be as low as that because a civil engineer says, sorry, boss, I can't work in the project location. He is a civil engineer. He's supposed to do the survey and he's supposed to do the construction work in an infrastructure project or a power project. He says, sorry, I would like to be in an air-conditioned environment doing some work.
KK, just a minute. This is precisely what I meant by saying. So, what didn't get him the job is not his competency. It's not the civil engineering competency that didn't get him the job.
It's the attitude.
Okay, it's the attitude. You see. So it's not the skill. That's I'll come back to you later. But I could not resist. Highlighting this when you were talking.
Your bingos are right on the point. And one of the important things we see is with their casual approach. They're good millennials, they're brilliant people, they're good youngsters. They never nurture a ownership mindset. They don't own their own lives because they're very casual in their life and they carry it to the organization. In fact, even in these pandemic times, the kind of efforts we have to make to tell them to wear a mask is a huge challenge. In fact, I have given a simple example. But they're brilliant, they're good. But grooming them needs enormous amount of effort and time and energy of the leadership team, which is a huge burden and cost, but we don't have much of choice because 50% of our country now are the youngsters. It could be Gen Y, or it could be Gen Z, it could be the millennials. It's a mix of all these people. And one more aspect is most of these millennials talk about entrepreneurial mindset. They want to become entrepreneurs. How many of them are successful? They want to start their own business. These kind of people, they experiment, they fail, and they look for jobs. And when they come here, they have a different set of expectations. This is another, backlash into the hiring model. When we are hiring, this is a huge challenge. And one important thing is you got to pamper them so much, constant, recognition, feedback. They always want instant gratification. That's the order of the day. And yeah, go ahead.
We will try to hear that. In fact, there is one question from a viewer. He has actually put a very fantastic. I think it gets aligned to the point which we are discussing at this moment. This question, it is directed to Raja sir. Okay, sir. He says, Raja sir, every show of yours there is some new perspective I learn and practice. Now, coming to the disciplined efforts that you spoke about, what does one need to do to acquire at all levels of life to continue? To be precise, how can I learn disciplined efforts before I teach others? And the person is an HR professional who does a lot of recruitment and does a lot of business partnering for his organization. He comes from an automotive background, previously worked in an IT services setup. So I think it's a beautiful combination and a timing question. So Raja sir, I would like to ask you, and then I want to go back to Hari, because specifically this is a point on coaching which he spoke while we conversed around 14-15 days back in the topic in conversation with the thought leader. Yes, Raja sir.
Venkat, just for fun, I want to know the name of the person, if you don't mind. What's the name?
Kashyap. Raghunath Kashyap. Yeah.
Raghunath Kashyap. Namaskar. I'm so happy that you asked this question. Like I simplify most of the things in life, even this concept of discipline, I have simplified. And the simplified version, I find that it is easily understandable to people, adaptable to people, and to be able to put into practice by people, because I do a fair amount of motivational talk to youngsters, and with them, this works very well. I've converted discipline into a simple formula. Discipline D is equal to 2E plus 2P. Discipline D is equal to 2E plus 2P. So what is 2E? Enable and ensure. That's 2E. Enable and ensure doing the right things. Plus 2P. What is 2P? Prevent and prohibit doing the wrong things. Discipline is a very simple formula where you enable and ensure doing the right things. You prevent and prohibit doing the wrong things. Just take a very simple example. Suppose I say, look, for my height, I should be only around 65 kilos, but unfortunately, I'm at about 85 kilos. What do I do? So doctor says, change your food habits. You must have food discipline. What does that mean? What doctor is saying is, hey, Raja, first of all, you have got to enable and ensure that you eat the right kind of food. You eat a lot of salads, you eat a lot of vegetables, you eat a lot of proteins or, kind of right kind of proteins. And he says, prevent and prohibit. Prevent too much of carbo, prevent too much of oil, prevent indulging in sweets. All right. And he also says, enable and ensure. These are the timings of eating that you should follow. Prevent. Whenever you feel like a little thirst also, you mix it up with hunger, going and, kind of indulging in snacking. 2E plus 2P is the magic formula required. Now, for example, you take India. Now I'm coming to a larger social system. Indians are amazingly good on the 2E part of it. Indians are terrible on the 2P part of it. Take a very simple example of yourself. Anybody sitting in this forum right now, all of you would have paid your taxes. All of you would be paying your electricity bills. All of you would have been paying your vehicle taxes. How many of you, when you see on the road somebody either defecating or urinating, or somebody not wearing, let's say, a helmet, or a youngster who is not entitled to a license driving a two-wheeler, would dare to tell him or stop him and say, hey, you know what? This is not right. Don't do it. The policeman is supposed to do that, right? In a system where discipline enforcement is not on the individuals with a sense of ownership about society, but is attributed to specific role holders in the social system, then you are not a disciplined society. You are a wishing society. I think this internalization, if that takes place, enabling and ensuring doing the right things, first of all, to the social system. I'm saying, Venkat will be aware of that. I talked about social accountability as a concept that needs to emerge. We are talking about corporate social responsibility. We are all talking about our social responsibility. I'm saying it's time we moved into social accountability. What is the difference? Accountability is where I become the causative factor for a influencing. Not because there is a problem that I will respond. Response involves a trigger and therefore responding. I'm saying no. You have to become the source. You have to become the fountainhead. You have to become the causative factor for things to happen. That level of commitment to discipline creation. I think that is what leadership has to inspire. I completely agree with Hari, that we have to have such leadership which can bring in these conceptual clarities and inspire the minds. And then we will have, I would say, today I'm saying, I see the possibility today, socio-politically, we can see non-preaching but practicing socio-political leadership, which is very inspiring. If we can kind of bring shades of that into our other aspects, especially into industry and business, believe me, Kashyap, we can bring in leadership. And when I talk to the youngsters, and in the last 7-8 months, out of the about 20-25 webinars that I've addressed, at least about 7-8 of them were only with the student population. And they understand this. Unfortunately, this concept of being able to be accountable to prevent and prohibit the wrong things from happening, that has not got internalized into our blood. I think we need to have that. If we can get over there, we'll be a little different. Okay? Thank you.
Great, thanks. Hari, now I would like to ask you, now, how would you link this, take these points, and based on your experience while you're coaching leaders from the business fraternity and the senior leaders, how do you ascertain and guide them or suggest them? What do you suggest them to get this disciplined effort as well as build from a holistic viewpoint rather than being skill oriented or typically at the foundational objective level? What aspects do you tell them?
See, it's like, sorry. See, let me just go back to what I was saying and then, connect it to what, KK mentioned and Mr. Raja mentioned. See, I was talking about, how, this socio-economic, a foundation or platform that Mr. Raja is saying, it's awesome. What we are missing out there is, or what we have missed out so far, is actually involving the corporates in that, because, a lot of the socio-economic changes, unfortunately, we are waiting for the political systems to bring in the change, and we are looking at the political system to be the trigger. Okay. And we have, if you notice all over the world, even in India, as long as we were waiting for the political system to create the infrastructure, that didn't happen. Okay, only in the last 15 years or so, we invited the corporate, and that's when you had the PPP initiative, the private government initiative,
Public
once
partnership.
Public-private partnership.
public-private partnership, once we got that in, then you could see, infrastructure developing at breakneck speed, all kinds of infrastructure, whether it is road or transport or the quality of the infrastructure, etc., etc. Okay, now that's what seems to be missing in the socio-economic platform, because till now we have not involved the corporates, or the corporates have not involved themselves. That's also equally, a lot of the corporates have only been consumers. They have not been the causative factors, like Mr. Raja was saying. So going back to my earlier point, where we got interrupted because Shankar had to leave. See, the point is, we have been, every corporate has been hiring for skills. Okay, they said, we want a 90% topper in that engineering, we want a 95% top. So every filtering, they kept hiring the technical skills. They said, we forget the attitude. Okay, just show me that you're smart enough to be hired and we'll hire you. Okay, we're just hiring your brains, forget your attitude. So what did the engineering colleges do? What did the schools do? They just kept fueling that. They just kept saying, okay, man, 15 years from now, somebody in 10th standard or 8th standard, his parents, his teachers, his society is telling him, look, man, when you finish 10th and 12th and, an engineering college, let's say 8 years from now, you will not get a job if you happen to get 85% marks. It doesn't matter if you are the most helpful guy in town, but, if you are the most arrogant guy in town, but if you get 97 marks, okay, you're likely to get a job, because that's a filter. Okay, so a lot of corporate hiring was based on how smart you are. Forget your attitude, forget your collaborative mentor, forget everything. And then when they hired them, what did you do? You created robots. Okay, just give them processes. Don't go beyond this process. Do this, do that, do this, do that. Okay, so all you were using was their brains, nothing more. You were not using their soul. You were not using their heart. Okay. Now, who's to blame here? Who's to blame here is the same corporates who are today blaming the blaming the youngsters. Okay, with due respects to KK and all other corporates out there, we are doing something. We are not. In fact, if you ask me, we are cheating the. To use a very strong word, we are cheating the youngsters. What we are doing is, just listen to me carefully. We're saying that there was a LinkedIn no post that I wrote about, I think a week ago. I was having a small discussion with somebody, I forget the name. He said that he had to go after something like what Shankar said, go after some 4,000 or 5,000 resumes and recruitments in order to pick some 50-60 people. Okay,
I remember that post. Yes.
Yeah. So we asked, how is that happening? The cutoff seems to be the marks. Okay. Now, while you're cutting off the marks, who are you actually hiring? Like KK was mentioning, we want to hire the most collaborative guy. We want to hire the guy with the right attitude. But what are we filtering on? We are filtering on the marks. Okay. So, we are cheating. We are telling the kids, okay, start getting more and more marks. Okay. But what are we hiring? We don't want the marks. We want the attitude. Who's teaching them the attitude? Okay, at the college level, who's teaching them attitude? Nobody's teaching them attitude. We are teaching them marks. Okay, we're teaching them get 85%, get 95%, get 100%. And we are saying, okay, I don't care if you got 100%, but if your attitude sucks, I don't want to hire you. No, that's cheating, man. You told that guy, spend 10 years of your life trying to get 100 marks. He got 100 marks and he came to you for a job. We are saying, I don't care about your 100 marks if your attitude sucks. Okay. So what we need to be doing is to teach children, at school level and at college level, that the most critical element, okay, in trying to be successful, whether you're a career or an entrepreneur, whatever, is to build this attitude. Okay, which means the corporates have to start coming in, and start sponsoring attitude education, behavior education, culture. People need to understand what you mean by culture and behavior. When you go for a campus interview, okay, somebody, exactly like what KK mentioned, somebody who's a civil engineer but who says, I want to sit in an air conditioner, he's not going to get a job. Yeah. Okay, I don't care if he gets 100% marks. I don't care if he's a topper in his college. But man, I would rather work with an 85% guy who's willing to go to the site than a 100% guy who wants the swankiest cabin, right? And this is exactly what happens with that, the entrepreneur. I'd like to use this word called wantrepreneur. They're not entrepreneurs, they're entrepreneurs. They want a lot of stuff. Yeah. So the entrepreneur mentality is fine, but provided it is nurtured in the right way at the college level, that's where kids learn. So if you're able to tell them that an entrepreneurial mentality means to have these kind of attitudes, to be able to struggle, to be able to make sacrifices, to be able to question, to be able to challenge, to respect somebody else's views, to respect somebody else's hard work. We are not teaching any of those. Okay, so what happens is, they all come out of college, they think that, okay, I've got 100% marks, there are tons of VC guys, with lots of money, and I can be an entrepreneur. All I need is a business plan. But man, he's not going to make it for exactly the reason. Okay, because for this reason, and that's the problem. With, so I would very, very, very strongly, it's happening in trickles, but I would very, very strongly recommend a lot of corporates. I do work with some colleges and some schools, and when I go in there and I talk about this concept called behavior and attitude, it's like 10,000 watts of bulb that switched on in the room. Suddenly they are able to see, oh my God, I totally realize, what I'm missing out. I totally realize. So, see, when you do that from your 8th standard, 9th standard, you're actually providing them, 7 years or 8 years of educative time to build this whole thing called behavior or attitude. Okay, and they don't see, for example, when you get a college guy, he doesn't know how to make a decision. Why? He's not been taught how to make a decision. He's been only told that if you ask a question like, what do you want to do in this job, you will never hear a guy saying, I want to contribute. You'll always hear a guy saying, I want to learn, I want to take. So you're looking at people who want to take from the system rather than contribute to the system. Okay, so an entrepreneur obviously cannot do that. He needs to contribute to the system. He cannot take from the system. He needs to create that system, right? So corporates getting in there and start providing that education is going to be a significant change, and I think that's going to significantly make the socio-economic impact that Mr. Raja is so passionate about. I totally agree with him, but I think the fuel for that change has to be. They are the guys who have the money. It's the corporate who has the money. Okay, so once the funds start flowing in, accountability will start coming in. Okay, and you will find a lot of these smart cookies coming out of various colleges. Some of them could become entrepreneurs. Some of them could have an entrepreneurial mentality joining in as project managers and and various organizations. They could create the change. They come with a mindset that says that I want to challenge status quo. And they learn the hard work. Okay, they don't come there with an entitlement mentality. They don't come there saying, look, man, I got 95%. Yeah. Okay, so why the hell should I go to to a work site? You send the 75% guy to the work site. Me, you give the cabin. You see, that's what needs to change. And this is what I tell senior leaders in organizations when I coach them. When they complain about absence of raw materials, when they complain that we are not able to hire, on this employability thing, I ask them, why are you not creating it, man? Why are you expecting to be fed? You're expecting to be spoon-fed. Okay, you're expecting a system to come to you and say, here is a guy, please give him a job. Is that how you're creating your market? No, isn't it? Are you waiting for a customer to come to you? No. You're going to the customer and saying, please tell me how I can serve you. Do the same thing with your resources also, no? Go to the colleges and say, we need these kind of people, and we are willing to support you. We are willing to fund you. We are willing to bring in external resources. Bring a coach like me, or bring somebody like Raja sir, or bring a professional like Mr. KK to say, these are the kind of guys we are going to hire 10 years from now. So if you guys want a job, become that guy, and you have 10 years to do that. Okay, that's what I tell. I tell them to focus on behavior and culture and attitude building, rather than simply go out there and say skills are not available. That's a complaint. That's not an initiative. When you say I can't hire anybody, that's a complaint. That's not an initiative. What are you doing about it? Okay, that makes you initiative. That makes you a leader.
Venkat, can I add on to just a brief add-on to what KK was saying?
Absolutely, sir. Feel free. Yes.
It's a beautiful point that we are touching, and this whole question of young India, young people with brilliant minds, with brilliant marks, as you very rightly said, and with this whole idea of entrepreneurship being the intent of running into starting with whatever venture XYZ capital startups. The fundamental issue is not knowing the difference between a startup and becoming an upstart. Okay,
That's true.
that is a real issue out there, because when you have that important criteria are called patience and deep involvement missing, but only superficial fringe advantages being visible to you, there's a huge mix-up between being a startup and being an upstart.
That's when you're an upstart.
And you land up with 70-80% of them being upstarts who want to rush and make it fast. यार हमको भी बनना है, कभी बनना है, अरे अगला साल बनना है यार, अच्छा और क्या करेगा, exit करेगा, अरे you are starting with the exit idea. Okay.
Yeah.
So two important things, Venkat, I would say, and to the other panelists. What needs to come in with what I call as this brilliant mind are two important things: real maturity, real capability. Real maturity is to know the difference deeply, reflectively, know the difference between self-indulgence and self-awareness. That will lead to maturity. I would repeat this again. The first part of maturity would come when there's a deeper understanding of the difference between self-indulgence and self-awareness. For example, self-indulgence will have a false idea of independence. Self-awareness will have a very mature and very polished idea of independence. I think this is a very important thing. The second one is very beautifully said by KK. The difference between classroom marks and competency is to know what is real capability. The real capability is the rightful attitude available with necessary knowledge and trainable skills. That's when capability gets built up. When they do, they will build skills. But if you have the right attitude, you will be willing to do. Not be a civil engineer wanting to sit in an air conditioning. So beautifully described, okay? So capability building and maturity building with these anchors that we talked about. From self-indulgence to self-awareness, maturity. From classroom marks to competency, capability. If we can really focus on this and do something about this, I think we'll be getting somewhere there, okay? I just wanted to add on.
Fantastic, fantastic. In fact, it has been such a great session. KK, yes, go ahead. Then we would go to the next one.
Let me respond to Mr. Hari, which is very valid. And it has been a culture for most of the IT organization. I've been in the IT industry for more than 15 years. So what he has been talking is a reality, and it persists even now. It is especially product development companies, service-oriented companies, and some of the MNCs, some of the banks, they have this criteria. But I want to share something with the panelists and Hari sir especially. I can understand where is he coming from. A pleasant experience in a candid way, which is rather pragmatically done in our organization. We are about 12 years old to 13 years old organization. After having traveled various industries and came to a renewable space, which is first of its kind. One of the earliest teams who first of its kind in the airport industry for the first time, Venkat and me worked, actually, that's what he was mentioning. The very domain airports is first of its kind when both me and Venkat worked. Similar thing in renewables. What we did is, there is no rocket science in an engineering company or a power company or an infrastructure company. So what we did is, in fact, we developed our own talent pool by identifying some colleges which are in tier 2 and tier 3 towns and closer to who can come and take careers. We are not interested about marks at all. In fact, you would be surprised, even people who are selected but they have some papers pending, we gave them time to join if they are having the right attitude.
Brilliant, brilliant.
Our idea was, we will groom them, we will train them, and this is a journey started way back in 2011. By 2010 and 2020, our retention is 93%. Our attrition is...
This is exactly what happens. This is exactly what happens when you create the attitude that you want to buy, period.
Absolutely, sir. And we are into hydro business, wind business, and solar business. One of the things we do is we train people in multiple disciplines, tactfully by giving them the right interventions year on year. And our man hours has started at 3 per employee per year in way back 2010. Today we are at 38.7 hours per employee. And this is an investment we consciously make to give careers to the people. And we don't want brilliant IITians and IIMs because but probably they may not see much of value in what we have been talking about, because this is engineering. We can groom them and they can make careers. And our recruitment conversion ratio also, that we have identified about 12 campuses where I go personally and give them sessions and prepare them that if you're interested in a project-oriented company like ours, these are the things we look at: more attitude and your flexibility to work in locations where it is required. And we promise you the careers in whatever way we explain them, with good and the bad and the ugly. And we even talk to their parents. That's one of the things we do. We engage with their parents. And in this pandemic scenario, in fact, to make sure our employees work in the plants, we have to give them that comfort. We were engaging with the parents. We were engaging with the spouses of the employees and make sure that they're given the comfort. And a lighter note, the millennials, I'm glad Hari brought it and even Raja sir brought it. A long-term means for a millennial is 1 year, sir.
Right. Very well said.
Out of 5 millennials, only one will work for 3 to 5 years. This is a broad experience of the various industries. So, I mean, we don't blame the millennials, but the problem is how much they adopt. In fact, their own parents say, hey, don't go to a project location, be in Hyderabad, be in Chennai, be in Mumbai, be in Bangalore.
No, KK, just to add to that perspective. See, this is happening because that millennial is a product of that education system, which is saying that, look, if you get 95% mark and you're coming from, let's say, a marquee, let's say you're an IITian with 95% marks, you shouldn't be going and working in Rajasthan. Yeah, you should get a US based job, or you should get a London based job. Okay, now unfortunately this attitude is built at the college level. Okay, so the more change, if you really want to see change at the hiring level, you actually have to start work at the college level, or probably even earlier, at the school level. You have to start changing mindsets. Okay, because what you mentioned is awesome, because a lot of organizations think that they have a very superfluous focus on people management. It's very heartening to see KK, you're kind of an organization that's doing this. See, what a lot of organizations think that people management is really about providing opportunities for growth, which is promotions and assignments and glamorous outputs, but they don't realize that it's really about connecting to the heart. Okay, if you actually create warmth, everything else becomes irrelevant. Yeah, I'm sure you will work for a lesser salary, you will work for a less glamorous looking cabin, you wouldn't mind traveling in a dusty road to reach your office, because it's very exciting to be in that group of people, in an organization that values you rather than values the cerebral output that you give. Okay, and the extension is that when you actually invest in people, the outcome is not merely retention or stuff like that. The outcome is actually business numbers, because what KK mentioned, that during the pandemic he was working with a skeletal staff and still had to make sure of the the production outputs. Okay, where is that coming from? Less number of people trying to deliver more and more means that it has to be the culture. Okay, I think Dr. Meredith Belbin is one of the foremost what do you say, OD people said that, a successful team or a successful organization, okay, is not a collection of brilliant minds. Okay, it's actually a brilliant collection of minds. Okay, so yeah, so the key is you're able to create a collection, the collectively which becomes brilliant, rather than put together a lot of brilliant minds and they'll all tug at each other. I think that's that awesome thing, and I really salute you, KK, for doing this. And you can see he's what he said is an actual example of what I told a few minutes ago, because he just validated that with an actual example. Yeah,
beautiful.
Awesome. Yes,
in fact,
fantastic.
also tell our leaders, we always say that leaders should be role models. But we tell our leaders, you should be modeling change, not role models.
Correct,
So
absolutely.
you should be modeling change.
Very good.
Talk to this generation of various generation of people like Gen Y and millennials, and make sure that modeling change with right, advice and counseling, and pamper them also with whatever things they require. We all know, as seniors worked in various levels of profession, small recognition makes big difference. Even a pat on the shoulder, which we said, it goes a long way. So, I don't think I should be insisting on that, but we should always make sure that these millennials are not recognized means you have a danger. So make sure that you handhold them and recognize them with in whatever way, with small gestures.
Actually, my experience with millennials and youngsters, I worked with a lot of organizations, where the hiring has happened, and I worked with L&T. I worked with a few organizations in UAE. I worked with Ample Technologies, which is an Apple partner. In fact, with the Imagine chain of stores, their average age is like 20 plus, 25, kind of thing. Now, one of the things, the exciting things that you notice, which is what Mr. Raja said is, youngsters are excited to learn. You just have to provide them with a direction. You have to provide them the light, and they're willing to walk that path. Okay. Now, unfortunately, what happens is, all of us are sitting here in a judgmental mode, blaming them, for the kind of people they have become, rather than helping them change, change their way of life. And it doesn't take much. Okay. And like I said, I've sort of done a few, webinars or sessions of, or etc. You just have 1 hour, 1.5 hour sessions with them. And, suddenly the whole world lights up. I've got a lot of parents coming to me and saying, my son is, just getting into the 10th standard next year. He's just completing 9th, and I don't know, what his interest is. And I spend a lot of time talking to the parent first, and asking them, what are your anxieties? Okay, why do you? So, almost always they come back to that same, recipe. He has to, get into engineering, or he has to get into medical, or he has to get into chartered accounting. And for somehow, for example, when that, I had somebody who came to me, about a few months ago, just before this, this academic year that went past, May, June. This guy came to me, and he said that, he was studying, like 10, 12 hours a day, and his parents want to get him into, medical and, stuff like that. And his mother also came along with him. And so one evening it was. So when I was speaking to him, I said, his mother was saying, this guy, he's not interested in studies. He's getting such low marks. He's getting only 75. And, can you inspire him? So I said, hang on. Don't, this is not a supermarket where you buy inspiration for. So I said, give me some time, and I asked the mother, I was speaking to her one-to-one, confidently, what are your anxieties? So this guy won't get into medical college. So I asked, okay, so what? Why is that an anxiety? No, he can't. By the time I went past 3 times, why? Why do you think? Why do you think? And why do you think? You realize that, the lady is stuck. The lady is stuck, because the only thing they actually want that guy to be is to be happy and be reasonably financially stable. Somehow they think that, happiness, financial stability, all of it is going to come only from these 3 areas. You either have to be a doctor, or you have to be an engineer, or be a chartered. Now, surprise is when I spoke to that guy, I told him, you come, then I took him upstairs, and, I was sitting in my room upstairs. I was asking him, what do you have to say? So he actually wants to be involved with animals. Yeah. Okay, this guy wanted to be involved with animals. Every weekend he goes and plays, with his neighbor's dog, and he takes care of that neighbor's dog. The dog is more familiar with him than with the neighbor. So I asked him, have you? He's been to every animal shelter in town. Okay, and this is what he wants to be. So if at all he wants to get into any kind of medical field, it has to be veterinary science. Now, for the parents, that's like a refugee camp. How dare you get into veterinary science? Okay, so simply helping them clarify this perspective, suddenly felt liberated. And suddenly the mother said, I don't know what you spoke, but he's come back very energized. I said, you better get energized, considering what he actually wants to do. So the issue is not you, it's not your life, it's his life. As long as you're not doing anything that is immoral or illegal, okay, you're fine. Yeah. Because today there's money in everything. There's money in housekeeping. There's money in sweeping, and there's money in packaging. There's money in everything. That's that's the perspective of millennials that I want to add. That it's up to us to provide the guidance or the torch. And I would love to work with Mr. Raja if you have these kind of initiatives, because I'm very clear that the change has to happen at the mindset level.
Absolutely.
At a very early age. It cannot happen once they've spent tons of money and years and they've come out of a swanky looking college, like an IIT or an Anna University or something like that, and then suddenly they all want big ticket jobs, and that's the problem. That's a mindset. Unfortunately, they are not to blame. That mindset is to blame. And I would separate it. It's that mindset that is creating the problem. It's not the person. So if you change the mindset, the person is highly hireable. It's highly workable. Sorry.
Excellent. Actually, this session, it has been so, I would say, comprehensive and detail-oriented. First of all, I would like to thank each and every one of you for sharing your time as well as sharing your thoughts and making it so crisp and clear. As a nutshell, I would try to say the 4 things which are extremely important looking at the objective of this particular panel discussion. I think the first one is we need that matured outlook and self-disciplined efforts. And second one is on the self-awareness. Third one is a extremely important thing where I feel looking at the problems and challenges that we have discussed, be it from Shankar, from KK, as well as the inputs and pointers from Hari and Raja sir. I think it's a collaborative effort which is extremely important today. As you rightly mentioned, if corporates are talking about they're not finding the skill sets, right, they are to be blamed. So is it not a great opportunity to actually collaborate and build relationship with education institutions where they can also enter the educational setup and take that accountability to mold, nurture, and build the talent that they want, right? And the fourth one is certainly having a vision and a long-term purpose and not just be constrained. So, I would like to conclude this panel discussion with saying these 4 specific aspects. And I'm taking the lenience of taking it from Raja sir's framework. I think one basic aspect that is required is sharing, caring, and sacrificing. Unless the corporates and every walks of life, if they have to build that collaboration and build the talent and gain the talent, if they are ready to share their knowledge with the education system, ready to care the educational system and care the students and the millennials, and ready to sacrifice in terms of, giving up their time and building the talent, I think it is going to be a fantastic opportunity for us, specifically in India, to be able to go to the next level. My final request is your closing comments, starting with Raja sir.
Yeah, so I would say, as much as our focus could be corporate, our audience could be corporate, I think it's very important for us to recognize that it is the ability to be influencers of the holistic system, okay, and a leadership thinking that therefore we need to take all the stakeholders, let's say the cultural aspect of the stakeholders, the economic aspect of the stakeholders, the socio-political systems that the stakeholders are living in, the kind of belief systems and the conditioning that they're in the living environment. Like we talked about, we don't have to blame the youngsters for their mindsets, because those mindsets are built in by whom?
Exactly.
The teachers talk about competitive life, parents talk about competitive life. Nobody's teaching them about collaborative life.
Absolutely.
Where will he learn? So let's recognize this. Let's take this big step of becoming perspective influencers of the larger system in which we are existing. And let's start asking deeper questions as to how can we do that. So I truly appreciate, KK, your question. Yes, I choose to spend at least about 25 to 30% of my time talking to only students and youngsters. And you're right. You can't teach the maturity at the end of their life. The maturity has to be taught at the beginning of the journey, not at the end of the journey. Self-awareness and other things have got to be sown as seeds when they are into their school levels, not into some upanyasam when they are 55 years old, when life is done already. Let's prepare them for the journey. I think that's what I would say. I would say my biggest takeaway is let's create a mindset that we prepare youngsters for the journey at the beginning of the journey,
Right.
at the end of it.
Right. Right. Very good. I think that's valuable.
KK, I would like to hear from you.
The socio-economic political systems change or not, self-indulgence and self-awareness should bring in a great amount of positive change, which can enable an individual, an youngster, to sustain any kind of uncertainties.
Absolutely.
In a very philosophical way.
Yeah.
As Ramana has always said, Ramana Maharshi said, who am I? Probably they got to explore at a very younger age and then passionately build the careers around them. That's what on a note. And thanks for this opportunity. It's a pleasure to be with Raja sir and Hari, and it's an honor, I feel, that to be around with both of you.
Likewise.
Hari, I'd like to hear the comments from your end.
My closing comments would be that this is such a passionate topic for me, and I guess for all the panelists here, because we are really talking about how to get how to make change happen, and how to harness the the inherent power of people. So I mean, you could have a 5-hour session and still not complete. But so this is awesome, and I really love the opportunity to speak to hear and listen to KK and Mr. Raja and Shankar. I think my biggest takeaway is the fact that there are many people thinking on similar lines. It gives me great confidence, to that a real life organization, like Greenko is actually validating the kind of points that we are saying. So these are not theoretical, points that are, nice to hear, but it's actually applied in practice, and they are seeing business returns. So that's the biggest takeaway for me, that a lot of these things. And what I would like to offer here is, I'm so passionate about helping change happen at the at the young level. I do this as a pro bono kind of a thing with a lot of schools and colleges. I'm happy to support any of you, Mr. Raja or KK or Venkat, on a totally pro bono basis. If you have if you have opportunities where you need to address children or schools or colleges, just feel free to let me know, and I'll be happy to chip in with with that perspective of having to build behavior and stuff like that. Or KK, if you're or if anybody, if you're getting into a campus recruitment, or if you're getting into a recruitment kind of a thing, I'll be happy to spend some time with your recruitment managers in trying to tell them what, how should you interview these youngsters, and what should you be looking for, rather than the typical questions, what do you want to be 5 years from now, and what did you do in that project, and etc., etc. In fact, one of the most commonly used opening statement in any interviews, tell me a few words about you. Okay, and this is this is you can virtually bet on this as being the first statement in any interview. Tell me something about yourself. You can bet a lakh of rupees and you'll win, because unfortunately that's how it happens. Also happy to chip in with if you've got new campus recruits that you're coming in, and if you want to prep them or prep their mindset, I'll be happy to sort of spend an hour or two with them, just helping them with this thought process. So
sure.
That's my offer to all of you. But absolutely brilliant to hear this, and quite excited by what you see.
I just want to leave you with one interesting experience we have gone through in this pandemic. We have over 127 power plants of wind, solar, and hydro. A kind of leadership team and managers and line managers have to engage at 4x level to make sure there is an emotional connect and the kind of support with the employees even with minimal staff we have to run. Touch wood, there is not even a single hour of stoppage of power generation.
Wow, that's awesome.
And the whole credit goes to the employees and teams, but it wasn't easy in a virtual environment. And that was possible only with the kind of touch we maintained. And these people are also know that we always take care of them, and they have that trust which is built over the years. And the lowest we have is the retention is 4 years to 10 years. People have been there. So it's an experience, and it's an eye-opening experience even to me, because this kind of a situation was a challenge to me also. When we planned the BCP, business continuity plan, we got to really fine-tune it and make sure that we have a balance between their work life and also the generation.
I want to ask an interesting question to Mr. Raja. With your kind of passion and depth in the subject and your connections with the film industry, why is it that they are not using someone like you more often in trying to make changes to their own success criteria, to their own there are a lot of production houses, it's getting corporatized, there's a lot of distribution houses, production houses. I always used to think that this is one industry which is which can tremendously benefit from from a culture change, from a mindset change. And to see someone like you with so much of depth and passion and knowledge, I'm really curious, as to why is it that, and I'm sure there are more like-minded people like you there. Why don't they tap into someone like you?
Okay, so it's a good question. In the first place, 99.9% of the mindset in the film industry is that we are into the entertainment product and services industry. Okay, very clear. We are not into education industry.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, some of the best brains, and if I mention the names, you will get shocked, but I don't want to mention the names, in conversations are very clear. Mm-hmm. When you talk to them and talk about their ability to create such awesome films, and why would they not use the films as a medium to influence, kind of character building, mind thinking? They very clearly tell you that we are here to create, of course, a very, very interesting, viewable product, but that is entertainment. Okay. So the foundation is very, very clear as far as their mindset is concerned. So based on that, when it is kind of working, and if you look at, therefore, the connectedness, anything which is appealing and distracting your eyes and ears is what becomes entertaining. Anything which is drawing your eyes and ears is what is entertaining. Then comes the question of engaging. As long as your eyes and ears entertaining is also engaging, you're done. You got 99.9% clearly over there. Now, beyond this, in that 1%,
it's not even 1%, less than 1%.
Less than 1%. Okay, so I think that's how. And you're right. Today, the professionalization of the film industry, in terms of large houses coming in terms of investment and all that, they are also completely aligned to this idea of entertainment product. Okay, they are not here as saviors of society. Forget saviors, of even supporters of change in society.
Awesome. So, it's awesomely surprising.
Okay. Yeah, very, very much. And you'll be surprised. And as much as you very, kind of respectfully talked about my connection to the film industry, there were a lot of times in the film industry, in the settings of the film industry, in the meetings, in the forums of film industry, I completely look like a non-filmy man. That becomes the problem.
Yeah, now I'm able to figure that out. Okay, when you look at that 99.9%, you are part of that 0.1%. I totally understand. But I'm amazed that see that there are a lot of corporate turnarounds that can happen. Like, for example, if you look at AVM Studios, which has become a non-entity,
right?
And they were a powerhouse. Something even as early as, let's say, 25 years ago. It was they were quite they're quite much in the game. But the fact that they were not able to change their mindset, the fact that they were not able to trigger change, somehow they become a non-entity. wouldn't they want to stay relevant? Similarly, you find a lot of similar looking production houses or distribution houses.
I'll give you an answer because there's a very beautiful question. I'll give you an answer. Also, keep in mind this other side, wherein in India, especially in India, especially in South India, especially in Tamil Nadu, your whole hinging of the film industry's economic viability success is on the star system. Okay.
Yeah, that's true. Yes.
Okay, so you don't make films because of the stories. You make films for the stars. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
I'll connect to that later. But the long and short of it, there was a beautiful interview with Nagareddy sir. This was about 20 years back. This interview, Vijaya Vahini Studios, one of the greatest studios of the earlier times. They were, with Gemini, Vijaya Vahini, and AVM. They were the triumvirates.
Yeah,
okay,
right,
they were the biggest ones. The best of South Indian films and even Hindi
from
films.
there. Yeah, absolutely.
And the interview question, and this was in Doordarshan in those 20 years back. The question by the interviewer was, Nagareddy sir, you have been a doyen of this film industry. You're with A.V. Mayappan Chettiar and people of that kind. You're the Dada Phalke of South India, that kind of a person. You used to produce amazing films earlier. Why have you stopped producing films? So Nagareddy sir, in his own bit of a broken Tamil, but very nicely and lovingly said, அந்த காலத்துல பணம் போட்டு முதல் போட்டு படம் எடுக்கிறவங்கள முதலாளி அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு மரியாதை இருந்துச்சு. அதுல தொழில் செய்யறவங்களுக்கு அந்த உணர்வு, யாரெல்லாம் தொழிலாளிங்க, நடிகர், நடிகையர், ஆர்ட் டிபார்ட்மெண்ட், மேக்கப் போடுறவனுங்க, செட்டு உருவாக்குறவங்க, கேமராமேன், எல்லாரும் தொழில் செய்து தொழிலாளிங்கிற பெருமையில இருந்தாங்க. இன்னைக்கு முதலாளிக்கு மதிப்பு இல்லை. அந்த ஆக்டர், ஹீரோ, அவனுக்கு இன்னைக்கு தேவைக்கு இல்லாத ஒரு மதிப்பு வந்துருச்சு. அப்படிப்பட்ட இடத்துல முதல் போட்டு இவ்வளவு ரிஸ்க் எடுக்கிற முதலாளிக்கு மரியாதை இல்ல பொழுது அங்க நாம இருக்கிறது சரியில்லை, நான் விலகிட்டேன்.
Superb, yeah, that's awesome.
This is what his answer was.
And I think that's true. I think that sort of summed up what you mentioned a little while ago about the star system being the root cause of something like this.
And you can say, I mean, in a private talk, I can talk about what all that it does. And today I can tell you, because of personal experience, which means touching my skin, how there is a manipulative socio-political system.
In that
manipulative socio-political system which drives especially Tamil films.
Yes.
A lot of films.
A small request, panel. We are already 2 hours at the session, and just thinking that slowly we are going off track. Probably we will connect offline, and we'll go ahead with this. Okay, viewers, thanks a lot, and hope you find this session useful and has immense learning potential in it. Thank you all for joining, and thank you, panel. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Venkat, and absolute joy, KK as well as Hari sir.
You too, all of you. It's great joy, and please do share your coordinates. Would love to stay in touch, and we'll of course connect on LinkedIn immediately.
Most certainly.
Please do share. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank
Good day. Good night.